Hello there, this is your average Joe, and I'm going to go ahead and do the APA issue's first ever guideline to emasculate men. It's not the actual title of the article, but that's basically what this is about. I'm going to do a brief overview as I've tried recording this now about 8 times, and I keep going into the 30-40 minute mark. So I'm hoping to get a little bit closer to something that's a bit more reasonable for you guys to go ahead and listen to. If you'd like me to go ahead and basically go deeper into something, I'd like to hear what you guys want to hear me talk about. I know there's a lot of hearing here. And essentially whether or not, just what you guys' thoughts are on this, because this is a pile of horse shit. I'm not even going to be, I'm not going to lie to you guys. It's, ooh, buddy. So, here we go. This article is by Stephanie Papas. She is not your daddy. So, we start off immediately from the get-go in the third sentence. Some woke social justice NPC programming at its finest. For decades, psychology focused on men, particularly white men, to the exclusion of all others. That's right, a primarily white developed nation coming up with the concept of how human interaction works and using primarily white men to further research. That's just awful and not exclusive enough, even though the entire concept of inclusive intersectionality is literally less than 5 years old. But, I digress. Men still dominate professionally and politically. Apparently, Stephanie, you do understand we're now in the 116th Congress, not the 115th, and that it's majority female now. So I would suggest you change your article, because this was actually written this month. So you're behind the times there. And then it goes into, of course, the something is amiss for men as well, and talks about all kinds of fun statistics like homicide, suicide, life expectancy, and, oh yeah, the fact that boys are more likely to get diagnosed with ADHD than girls. Well, it couldn't happen to have anything to do with the fact that if you read the diagnosis for ADHD, it matches the behavior of what a little boy acts like. No, that can't be it. Hey, what? Just give him Xanax and Ritalin, it'll be fine. Screw being a parent. Taking care of your kid and not just drugging them. So, it talks about this guideline has been 13 years in the making, and I have to say that if this article took 13 years to write, you need help, because it's bad. I'm gonna link it into into the description of the video, but I'm not even a grammar Nazi, and this is driving me nuts with how horrible parts of this are written. And they draw on 40 years of research showing traditional masculinity is psychologically harmful and socializing boys to suppress their emotion, and that causes damage both inward and outwardly. So, if I had to guess what research this is referring to, it can only be the research conducted by second and third wave feminist psychology graduates, which happen to be the majority in this field. Weird, it's almost like there's a bias or something. Yeah. Many researchers who study femininity also work on masculinity. Right. Okay. And, okay, if anyone right now listening to this is going, but wait, the science in psychology. Here's a scientific quote for you, so that way, I'm sure that there's no bias in this whatsoever. Though men benefit from patriarchy, they are also impinged upon by patriarchy, says Ronald F. Levant, EDD. Science, in a nutshell. So, and then it goes over the next paragraph, the needs of men. Which, by the way, if you're starting a new paragraph, if it's a title, everything besides of should be capitalized. Nerd. Prior to second wave feminist movement in the 1960s, all psychology was a psychology of men. Again, I've already covered the reason why for this. The only developed nations at the time that were doing this were primarily white nations, and it was male psychologists trying to understand male psychology because it is a baseline for human behavior. If you're a man trying to start the baseline for female psychology, you're in for a rude awakening. It's not going to work well because you don't understand it. So, although I do have to say, I think it's interesting that, because then they talk about how this left out women and people of color, and it really didn't, actually. The original hypothesis over female behavior essentially was you take how a man acts and how he responds to things, and you just remove logic, and that is the female response to essentially how their psychology works. And what's interesting was this was dismissed, obviously, in the 1960s by the feminists, that they try to, come up with different terms for it. There was very interesting back and forth over the developmental cycle when it came to morality, and in which the original, so things like, there was a developmental study, I can't remember the psychologist that did it off the top of my head, but his study was about morals and morality, and that boys and men go through 6 stages of moral development, where he found that in the same stages, females only went to 3, and they stopped at the 3rd one. Many females, if not all of them, never made it past the 3rd one. They never made it to the 4th one. And what happened was that he had a feminist came in and rewrote that, so instead of saying that women were stunted in morality, she stated that women had a different sense of morality, and that it was a caregiver's morality, and not, the same as boys' morality. Even though it was the exact same thing any other way, she just retitled it to try and make it nicer. So it's the same thing with how these psychologists have addressed women's behavior and psychology. It's the same concept. They just readdressed it, and they try to dress it up and make it seem so much nicer than it actually is. It's as simple as women do not largely use logic. They largely use emotion to make this thought processes. But that is not the point I'm trying to make here. This is about male masculinity and toxic men. And there's a few sentences in here that are basically, they get right to the point, and, I love just the complete transparency in this. The main thrust of subsequent research is that traditional masculinity, marked by stoicism, competitiveness, dominance, and aggression, is, on the whole, harmful. It's written in such a way that you can actually quote it like this. The main thrust of subsequent research is that traditional masculinity is, on the whole, harmful. Alright, thank you. You got to the point. You actually stated, obviously, exactly what you think. And you're wrong. But, let's go ahead and get into how they attempt to kind of, bolster this. And they only use it. It's funny because this is like one of the shortest paragraphs in this when I'm talking about in reference to them attempting to explain an argument, because it's only 4 sentences. And in these 4 sentences, it's literally 2 of them are quoting from studies, and the other one is men socialized in this way are less likely to engage in healthy behaviors. And then it does 2 studies, and that's it. That's all they use to try and, it's this horrible lack of self-care and unhealthy behaviors. Like, one of them was that a 2011 study led by Kristen Springer, PhD of Rutgers, found that men with the strongest beliefs about masculinity were half as likely as men with moderate masculine beliefs to get preventative health care. Preventative health care is getting a physical. It's going to a psychologist when there's nothing wrong, going like, hey doc, how do I think? Am I thinking right? Going to a doctor and going, okay, give me a physical, show me, I'm healthy, right? I think, it's, I don't see how is that an unhealthy behavior? Well, you're not going and getting physicals. How do you know if there's something wrong? Well, if I wake up one morning and something doesn't work, that tends to tell me there's something wrong, or something starts hurting for an extended period of time. That tells me that, something's wrong. I'm not going to go spend money to have someone tell me, no, you're going really well, dude. You know, well, yeah, it's... In 2007, okay, this sentence, I'm going to read it, and I'm going to correct it because this is the one that I was talking about earlier. This one makes me lose my mind. And in 2007, researchers led by James Malik, PhD, of Boston College, found that the more men conformed to masculine norms, the more likely they were to consider as normal risky health behaviors such as heavy drinking, using tobacco, and avoiding vegetables, and to engage in these risky behaviors themselves. Here's how you write a sentence like this, Miss Not Your Daddy. Ms., Mrs., I'm not sure. You didn't put that in there. I also didn't put in any education. It seems like you're just writing this just for shits and giggles. In 2007, researchers led by James Malik, PhD, of Boston College found that the more men conformed to masculine norms, the more likely they were to normalize risky health behaviors such as heavy drinking, using tobacco, and avoiding vegetables, period. That's how you write that sentence. So essentially, if you drink heavily, which is typically linked to stress, use tobacco, which is typically linked to stress, you have wanton amounts of, unhealthy masculinity. It's not toxic masculinity, it's unhealthy masculinity. Traditional, unhealthy, harmful masculinity. And avoiding vegetables. That's right. You didn't eat your carrots, you're now a harmful masculine man. Shame. Doing the little finger thing, shame. Next sentence. This masculine reluctance towards self-care extends to psychological health. Okay. Self-care and preventative health care are not the same thing. And in MGTOW, where you have men primarily just exclusively showing masculine traits, these men take good care of themselves for the most part. Not saying that they're the epitome of health, but most of these guys, like myself, work out. We eat right. And we don't spend money, we spend money on what we want to do, but we just throw it down the gutter to make ourselves feel good. And the thing is, when it comes to psychological help, well, you write an article like this, and then you wonder why men don't seek psychological help when your field is not only considered a pseudoscience because of this stuff right here, but also because the last thing I want to do is go to a psychologist, open up about my deep, dark past and my secrets and all of these things I'm having problems with. And then the first thing I get in response is, well, have you tried checking your privilege? Gee, thanks! Wow, that fixed everything! The patriarchy, me accepting the patriarchy, and I'm a straight white male who's so privileged and so just emboldened in my privilege and my right to just beat women and tell them to get back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich. And, I tell minorities that you're terrible and you can't function like me because I'm white and you're not. And I just have money coming out my ass because, I'm white and I have privilege and inheritance and all the rest of this, jazz. Right. That's why men don't get psychological help. Not to mention the fact that a man that does get psychological help is more likely to lose his job, lose a relationship. He's more likely to be looked down upon, not by his male counterparts, but by his female counterparts. And that, oh yeah, by the way, it will never leave you. The first time you admit that you're not sound of mind, that will never leave you. Unless you go to some place where people don't know who you are, they'll always remember the time that you admitted you weren't entirely there. So there's more to this article. I'm going to go ahead and link it down below. Essentially, the last thing I really wanted to go at is a very last sentence, because this, again, there's 3 sentences in this that give this completely, away as to what they really want to do. The last sentence is, if we can change men, we can change the world. So essentially what they want to do is emasculate men and effectively strip men of being masculine, because it's, in their minds, a harmful disease that needs to be cured. It's something that needs to be cured, not just, dealt with. And yeah. So, for the last part of this article, I wanted to go ahead and do the overview, because there's CE credits for any of you continuing education guys. Let's go ahead and do the learning objectives. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts and comments down below, and maybe some comments on the actual questions themselves. So, after reading the article, this CE candidates will be able to 1. Discuss the research that suggests the aspects of traditional masculinity, in quotation marks, can be psychologically harmful. So essentially, you don't have a choice whether or not it is psychologically harmful. It's just how it is psychologically harmful. Alright. 2. Describe the role of clinicians in working to address the needs of men and boys. Well, possibly not just doping boys on Ritalin and Xanax, and not just handing opioids out like candy, and antidepressants might do some justice to your system. But don't mind me, I'm not the one with the prescription. 3. Discuss the importance of encouraging pro-social aspects of masculinity. Pro-social what? Like socialization, socialism, social justice, professional socialism. It's up to you guys. I want to hear your guys' thoughts below. If you liked the video, please go ahead and hit that like button. And if you're enjoying my content on my channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell, so that way the next time I put out a video, you can go ahead and know that it's there. Other than that, I still would like to go ahead and hear your guys' thoughts, comments, and opinions down below. I've had some awesome people go ahead and comment, and I'm very, very thankful for your guys' feedback. And furthermore, to the 6 subscribers I still currently have, I just wanted to thank you very much if you went ahead and watched this video, for your valuable time. I understand it's extremely important and that we only get so much of it, so the fact that you went ahead and listened to my video means a lot, and I deeply appreciate you. Stay MGTOW, gents, stay strong, and stay off that plantation. And remember, your carrots tell you whether or not you are a toxic male.